You're listening to Crossing Borders with ANYP for the Always Next Year Podcast Studio Network. You can find the team on our Twitter at ANYPodcast or visit us on our website, www.alwaysnextyearpodcast.com. And now, to bring us in, the Jackdaws.
A fighting man I used to be, revered and feared through Killarney. Now I'm back, hitching with the wind. But if Mickey Flynn should ever find me, I'll throw me caution all behind me and square off on that son of a bitch again. He cracked open a river too, he beat me Sunday through and through, and such over my unconscious frame. I won me healthy sheriff fights, well lucky son still had me life since Mickey Flynn beat me dumb and lame.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome back to Crossing Borders. I am your host, Connor Donald, and this week I am joined by my hopeful new co-host going forward on this weekly show, another American, so we keep it Crossing Borders-esque, U.S. versus Canada, Scott Novick, who is also a part of TJs One Of Us, and I think that might be the only show you're a part of besides now Crossing Borders. Scott, how's it going?
Pretty good. Sitting here, got our Sixers on in the background, taking on the terrible Charlotte Hornets, but it's Sixers basketball, so I'm gonna watch it.
Yeah, I'm in my office, so I sadly have no TV in here, but I would love to be watching the Flyers. We're a bit different in that aspect. You're big on the Sixers, I'm bigger on the Flyers, but that's all right. We love all Philly sports the same, right?
For sure, yeah.
So this week we have come with 4 topics, 1 Eagles, 1 Sixers, 1 Flyers, and 1 Phillies topic. And basically, welcome to the show, Scott. And for those who have never listened to Crossing Borders, welcome aboard. And where the hell have you been all this time? Crossing Borders is essentially pitting Canada versus the United States in the most diplomatic way I can possibly think of. And like I just mentioned, that would be Philadelphia sports and debating hot button topics within Philadelphia sports. So I'm excited to have you aboard, Scott. And since you're brand new to this, I'm going to let you pick which of those 4 teams you want to tackle first.
All right, so let's start off with our Eagles because they're on a bye week, and I feel like they've kind of fallen out of the media a little bit. So we need to remind everyone why the Eagles are still important and that they're here.
Absolutely. I will never not want to talk Eagles football. It has been a really boring week, honestly. I did that review pod on the Kelly Green Hour. For those who have not checked it out and love Eagles football, hit up the Kelly Green Hour, and me and LJ host over there. But we're going to do this just like we're doing it today. We're going to do this on the Kelly Green Hour next week. So our topic for this week is simple. Who is your first half MVP for the Philadelphia Eagles?
I guess my take on this one's a little bit different. It's very, I guess it's easy to sit here and say Carson Wentz because he is our MVP, and we looked to him for a quarterback, but it's not like a cool pick. And to me, when I sat here and thought about this, the first name that came to mind was Jordan Howard, because Jordan Howard, he came on the team. We didn't really ask him for much. Honestly, we were just kind of having him be a place filler until Miles Sanders becomes a crucial part of the offense. And to be perfectly honest, Jordan Howard has exceeded all my expectations. I forgot that he actually was a very good back in Chicago. I wasn't excited getting him. I wasn't disinterested. He was just kind of there, right? I didn't expect anything from him, but he has exceeded all my expectations. He had a couple really big games. He's been crucial around the goal line. And on top of that, he's good enough that he's allowing Miles Sanders to be in the game. Miles Sanders, let's face it, is going to be the future of our backfield, hopefully. But we want to take as much pressure off of him as possible. In Philadelphia especially, it's a tough city. You don't want someone to have too much pressure on them too early. And I think Jordan Howard has afforded that to Miles Sanders. So for that, he is my MVP of the first half.
Short and simple. I like it. And you know what? I don't give a shit if it's sexy or if it's not sexy, because I'm going with Carson Wentz. It doesn't have to be. I am that cool kid. I'm walking down the hall and I'm saying, hell yeah, it's Carson Wentz, and you can't convince me otherwise. In what's been really an up and down first half for us as a team, prior to the bye week, we've had the injuries, we've had people calling out Jim Schwartz, people calling out Doug Peterson, we had the Orlando Scandrick thing, we had this mysterious person who we now all assume Orlando Scandrick, who was calling out Carson Wentz. Well, damn it, I don't care. I'm taking the cool pick. I'm taking Carson Wentz. Carson Wentz has been the most consistent player on the team. He's been the best player on the team. We've seen flashes from everyone: Fletcher Cox, Brandon Graham, Derek Barnett, even Orlando Scandrick. Hell, even he had a game once when he was there, but now he is shunned out of Philadelphia media and Philadelphia Eagles conversation for life, for becoming a staple on Skip Bayless's show, where they literally just basically kind of go back and forth bragging about the Cowboys. But I mean, despite the record, despite where we stand at 5-4, Carson Wentz, he's been so vital to that 5-4. We could easily be probably 2-7, 1-8, but there were some big games, some big situations where Carson Wentz had us and he kept us in the games. And he actually ranks in the top 10 in almost every category for a quarterback in the league right now. So, I mean, it's so hard not to choose your first half MVP as being the guy that you paid $30 million a year, and as that guy who has literally kept your team in games. He's literally throwing to guys who don't want to catch a football, who don't care to catch a football, who just don't seem to give a shit about being on a football field in general. And yes, I'm talking about Alshon Jeffrey, Nelson Aguilar, and pretty hard to talk about Ertz and Goddard because Ertz hasn't seen the targets, and Goddard, we can forgive those couple of drops he had. Same with Miles Sanders, we can forgive the fumbles because they've more than made up for it. But, I mean, I'm going to take that not so sexy pick. I mean, I got to take him. I mean, I love Jordan Howard. I love that we have become a run-first offense and we can really open up the offense that way. But I just can't justify Jordan Howard, Miles Sanders, anybody but Carson Wentz in this situation.
The only thing that really lets me refute that, because I do agree with you, right? It's hard to pick against the quarterback of a struggling NFL team that Carson Wentz has, for all intents and purposes, kept us alive in the season, because we could very easily be sitting here like the Chicago Bears and had a bunch of hype around us and, you know, that just flat out awful and just had a terrible year. But Carson Wentz has kept us around. The only thing that refutes that to me is I live in a world where I expect Carson Wentz to do this. And I don't know if that's entirely fair, but I don't care. He's our guy. He's a face of our franchise. We need him to do these kind of things. It's the MVP to me is always just a person who they greatly exceed expectations. They do something that you didn't expect them to do, and they turn themselves into a focal point of the offense. So we're becoming a run-first offense, which is not what anyone would have expected coming into the year. And I think Jordan Howard is a big part of that. But I'm with you. Carson Wentz is having a great year. He's getting a ton of shit in the media, which I don't think is warranted at all. I mean, the guy, for Christ's sakes, he goes into work every day and has a statue of the guy who played before him there. And he has to see that mentally every single day. I don't know how he gets over it. He's a tougher man than I'll ever be. But
and
yeah.
You know what the reality of it is for me, and I've said it in the Kelly Green Hour before, Carson Wentz is better than Nick Foles. Nick Foles would never be in the position he was in if it wasn't for Carson Wentz's 2017 season, where he literally, I don't give a shit what the media says and who voted for what. He was the MVP that season. If he had been able to continue, it would have been monster numbers. But he already did better than 3/4 of the quarterbacks that season. And he played 3 less games because of the torn ACL. But there is no way Nick Foles plays an entire season, and we saw it last season. There is no way Nick Foles plays an entire season and leads us all the way to the Super Bowl. I'm sorry. And you're not going to see that from Nick Foles, no matter where he is. I mean, obviously, where he is now, he's not in a very good position, I don't find. The offense is brutal. They did not build it around a Nick Foles-esque player. But I mean, at the end of the day, Carson Wentz is better than Nick Foles, and nobody's gonna refute that argument. I will sit here and I will close that fence door because I will not let you back through if I start to turn you towards Carson Wentz, because I don't want you on my side because at the end of the day, we should be proud of any quarterback and any success that we're having as a team. And in this situation, I love Nick Foles, but in this situation, and I was super proud of his success in bringing us that Super Bowl. But I'm super proud of what we have in Carson Wentz now and how Carson Wentz is playing. And at the end of the day, for me, it's just about the success at the time of the team, not just living in the past and winning that one Super Bowl, because that's just as bad as the people who sat there and continue to say, oh, it's only one Super Bowl, or, oh, you never had a Super Bowl before we didn't have a Super Bowl. And I'm just not that type of guy. But I mean, yeah, at the end of the day, it is hard to deny the presence of Jordan Howard and Miles Sanders. But I think that Jordan Howard and Miles Sanders definitely not for Miles Sanders, don't have that same success without a quarterback like Carson Wentz. We've seen Jordan Howard. He's had some tremendous success. But if you put him in that field with Mitch Trubisky this year and we don't acquire him, there's no way that you would be having this same conversation as a Bears fan or even considering that conversation, because Carson Wentz just opens up the offense so much more with the way that he could run, he could pass, he could hand off, he does it all. And that's why I think that he's our first half MVP, because at the end of the day, without Carson Wentz, if that's Nick Foles in the backfield, teams have kind of began to know what they're getting at Nick Foles. He's an RPO guy. He lives and dies by the RPO. Carson Wentz, not necessarily true. Definitely not in the same boat. So, I mean, I don't deny Jordan Howard's importance and his standout first half for us, but I think that it all definitely leans on a lot of Carson Wentz for Jordan Howard's success, and obviously the offensive line. But those three all intermingle and have great importance upon each other.
Yeah, absolutely. I actually think one of the funny things that I'd noticed, and I never thought about it until you were going through your spiel about Nick Foles not being as good as Carson Wentz, which I agree. He's just not statistically in the long run. We needed to stick with Carson Wentz, and, we wish Nick Foles well. The only thing that's strange is he went to a Jacksonville Jaguars offense where the receivers are better there than they are in Philadelphia, which is extremely weird. And had I looked at the stats, coming into the year, I would have thought someone was high if they're trying to present me that argument, but they're not. I mean, you got Shark, you got D.D. Westbrook. Those two guys alone are better than anyone the Eagles are throwing out there right now. And if Nick Foles couldn't, granted, he had half of a game of football to really do anything. So we'll see what he puts up at the back end of the year when he comes back after the Jags bye. That's something I'll be watching, because there will be a lot of people that will not give Carson Wentz the credit he deserves, that will only see after Nick Foles fails to carry the Jags offense through the rest of the year. And I hope he proves me wrong, and I hope he plays really well, but I agree with you. I can't live in a world where people think that we needed to stick with Nick Foles.
Oh, God, no, absolutely not. Especially when you knew you had to pay Wentz $30 million, and then you're looking at Nick Foles, who's making $20 million a year. Yeah, that's like almost a third of our cap spent on two people. And there's some people out there who I think would have enjoyed if we went that route, or even just moved on from Carson Wentz. And there's still people out there, Elliott Shore Parks, who think that we probably should have went that direction, but we didn't. And I'm happy, because that's my first half MVP, and that's going to be my second half MVP when all is said and done. Because when you're playing with the receivers that he's playing with, God damn it, you have to play 120% every night for that Eagles team. I guess I'll choose the next topic. I'm going to go with the Philadelphia Phillies, because I think after the Joe Girardi press conference and talking about with Rob on the last episode about ownership involvement within the Phillies, it's only right that we return to the graveyard that is the Philadelphia Phillies, and this disappointing season that we just had that saw Gabe Kapler get fired and Joe Girardi ultimately get hired. So my question is, Joe Girardi, does he make us a contender by himself right away?
No, I don't think he does. I think we have too many other issues to get over. I mean, Joe Girardi is a great coach, and I'm thrilled that we're investing in a great established coach for the Phils because we never do that sort of thing. However, if we don't fix the issues that we have in the pitching staff, if we don't fix the issues that we have, in Bryce Harper, quite frankly, I mean, he's just not outputting at the clip that we need him to. It doesn't matter how good the manager is, then the team's just not going to be there and be able to perform. On top of the fact that the division is getting better. We're in one of the toughest divisions in the NL, and having a good coach isn't enough. It's going to help, and he's going to win a couple extra games. But honestly, I'm still very worried about the Phils, and we have a lot of things to do this offseason. This was the first move, and we needed to get a coach, and Joe Girardi was the guy. I think it was a great move, and hopefully this means that we're investing in this year and going for it right now, because it wouldn't make sense to have Joe Girardi and then not go for it and get the pitching we need or get a couple extra bats. Like I'm curious to see what they'll do the rest of the offseason. But him alone, he doesn't make us a contender again.
I think that we've definitely taken a step in the right direction, and a massive step in the right direction, because I think Joe Girardi, along with the people that he can bring to his coaching staff, the connections that he has within the baseball world to find the right coaches, he will make us a contender right away, with or without a whole lot of changes. Obviously, we have to look at the free agency aspect. Obviously, we do have to attack free agency, but I don't think we have to necessarily attack it with as aggressive ferocity as Phillies Twitter would have you believe, where we have to go out and get Garrett Cole, Zach Wheeler, and oh God, whoever, Steven Strasburg, like completely remodel the pitching staff and completely remodel some of the bats. I don't necessarily believe that we need to do that. I think Joe Girardi's connections run deep. We know Joe Girardi's connections run deep in Major League Baseball, and I think that he does make us a contender right away, because he's done things with some teams that look worse on paper than the team that we're going to field next year at this point. I think that Joe Girardi is an incredible manager, and Gabe Kapler was too much based on the analytics. He was too much listening to the outside noise. He's just not meant. He probably would make a good assistant somewheres along the line. He'd probably stand a good chance of being an assistant somewheres. And if there is someone out there who actually wants to hire him again, best of luck. But I mean, Joe Girardi, I think he's a no-nonsense kind of guy. He's not going to take any shit. He's not going to mess around with these guys. He's going to unlock the full potential in these players. And if not, he definitely has John Middleton's ear, and he will say, this guy got to go. This guy got to go. We got to do something about this. We got to do something about that. And you know what? John Middleton's a guy who did this hiring has John Middleton's fingerprints all over it. So you know that Joe Girardi has a key to get into John Middleton's office if he has to. And he will go in there and say, this is what has to change. This is what has to be done. But I honestly think that, there's not that many massive changes that need to be made. I think that it was a lot of bad luck. It was a lot of rotten luck. There was some really bad injuries. We lost some key players. We were never a full-on Phillies squad that was on paper game one or during the preseason. We never were that team. So I definitely think that Joe Girardi makes us a contender, and he's going to hire the right staff to unlock the full potential of people around us. But that's not to say that I'm going to sit there and say, let's live and die on Nick Pivetta and his quote unquote potential again. That's not what I'm saying. But I'm saying that there's a good chance that he can get a pitching coach to unlock that potential. There's a good chance that he will get a hitting coach that won't emphasize a home run, or that won't emphasize swinging for the fences on every at-bat, but getting that ball into play. And he made that clear at his presser that there's a lot of changes that have to be made, and that's a lot of changes in just the strategy of the game, and not necessarily just constantly rolling with purely analytics day in and day out, batter in, batter out, pitcher in, pitcher out. It's not all about analytics. So I think Joe Girardi does make us a contender right off the bat, just with the staff that he can put in place around us. But with some of the free agents coming up, obviously we got to bring in some, but I don't think we need to go out there and spend another $500 million on our roster to overhaul it again.
Yeah, I don't think we need to do that, but I think we definitely need to pick up two starting pitchers. I was reading an interesting article the other day that I can't remember where it was from. It might have been from The Athletic, or I might have found it through Reddit. I'm not sure, but basically the whole point of the article was the Sixers offseason starts the day that Garrett Cole gets off the mound in Houston, and they need to center their offseason around getting Garrett Cole. And I couldn't disagree with something more. I would be very
Hmm.
upset if we got Garrett Cole here because, to your point before, saying that maybe Joe Girardi will bring in a pitching coach or the front office will bring in a pitching coach that can unlock the potential of, just our staff and make us a little bit better without even bringing someone in. That's why Garrett Cole was so good this year. I mean, the Houston pitching staff just completely changed his approach to the baseball game. He started throwing his slider way more and became the best pitcher in baseball with that. With that in mind, I don't think getting Garrett Cole would make us a contender. But I also, one of the other things too is I am so analytics driven for baseball, and I think the major leagues are entirely analytics driven. Gabe Kapler basically was just a figurehead, and he wasn't a good figurehead. He just took all of the analytics and he just made the statistically best decision. There was no heart behind it. And as much as I'm an analytics guy, I think if you don't have some heart behind it or a little bit of knowledge of the art of crafting a lineup and trying things and finessing guys around and you teaching young players what they need to do or finding the right spot for them in the lineup, then you're not going to be successful. I mean, that's what I hope Joe Girardi will bring to us. Um, I don't know if I see the Phils having a great year this year again. I think we might be in for one more just kind of rough season and people are going to be unhappy. But I don't think that's the worst thing in the world. I think what we need to do is bring in another pitcher, can compete a bit more in our division, and then on top of that, we need Bryce Harper to just get back out there and produce at a different level. And that's kind of just my goal going into this year, and I'm trying to keep expectations low.
This is totally unlike a Philadelphia fan to preach patience out there when we're watching yet again Boston completely dominating the current sports landscape. They're like the Bruins are first, the Patriots are first, the who else am I missing out on there? The Celtics are first right now. Like, I mean, we can't continue to preach patience in this city, and all we do is preach patience in this city. This Joe Girardi hiring says everything about not being patient. This has everything to do with no more patience. We built you the lineup. We put this roster in front of you, put the people around that need to make this successful. And that's what John Middleton's saying with Joe Girardi. And that's what John Middleton's saying with this hiring of Joe Girardi is he's done. There's no more nonsense. This is he put up with the nonsense with Gabe Kapler. And like you said, there was no heart. And it really felt that way whenever he talked about the team, whenever he talked about why he did what he did or the plays. There was nothing to it. When it was just like a complete breath of fresh air listening to Joe Girardi talk, even when he answered questions from Howard Eskin on a cell phone, for God's sakes. You could feel that drive. You could feel that determination to definitely turn this team around. And John Middleton, he's out of patience. Joe Girardi is not a patient fellow. He turns teams around instantly, and I think we definitely become 100% making the playoffs next season with Joe Girardi. How deep we make it, I hope very deep. I hope we even make it. If we make it to the World Series and fail, I would consider that a win as long as we make the playoffs and we make a push further than the first round. Anyone can get past the wild card round. So it's important that we step up and Joe Girardi proves that we're better than a wildcard team, that we're a team not to mess around with, especially after we were embarrassed by the situation with the Nationals and them looking back and saying, we didn't need Bryce Harper. Look at what the Phillies need to do. So Joe Girardi, I think he's coming in with a chip on his shoulder. I think that he's going to make us that contender because he knows that there's a lot of Phillies players with that chip on their shoulder, including Bryce Harper, and I'm sure John Middleton has a completely sour taste in his mouth over the whole situation with the Washington Nationals and them sitting there and saying, we did it with Bryce Harper. We had no egos. We didn't need that. Well, Joe Girardi's going to make sure it doesn't matter about egos. It doesn't matter about anything but winning the game and he's going to block out the outside noise like we know he can because he's a professional. He is one of the best managers. He's probably I would probably argue, a top 10 manager in MLB history. So I think it's definitely making us a contender right away. And I actually agree with you on that statement about Garrett Cole. I could not disagree more with that bonehead writer. No, we don't need Garrett Cole. It's not the be all to end all if we don't get him. There's other people out there. There's cheaper alternatives out there. And like I said, I just think it's about putting the right people in place to unlock the fullest potential of all these players.
Yeah, one guy, and I guess will be my last little bit on the Phils here. One guy that I have my eyes on is Cole Hamels. Cole Hamels, I mean, I'll preface this statement saying that Cole Hamels is my favorite baseball player ever. I was a pitcher by trade when I played baseball back in high school, if you even want to say that, because I wasn't very good, but I was a pitcher, so I studied everything Cole Hamels did. I watched his changeup, tried to figure everything out from that. And he's a guy that's out there. He's still heavily producing. And if you watched him at all in Chicago this year, he was beyond dominant for a extremely disappointing Chicago Cubs team. I mean, the Cubs were one of the most disappointing teams in baseball this year. And Cole Hamels would go out there and routinely give up one run, and he would pitch like 7 innings, and he would lose. And that's exactly what he used to do in Philadelphia, but he's still doing that 5 years later or 10 years later. I mean, he would be the veteran face that we thought we were going to get from Jake Arrieta. Who knows what's going to happen when he comes back from his surgery or if his arm's still the same.
Nothing.
I'm not too confident in him, to be perfectly honest. I think he's a fucking bum. But but we could use Cole Hamels back here. I think he's going to have a decent-sized contract, but I think he's worth it. And he would be an incredible voice in the bullpen to help out the younger guys. And I think it would go similar to what you were saying before, that Joe Girardi would unlock the potential of, just the different hitters and different pitchers and stuff. I think Cole Hamels or another veteran presence could play a huge part in that as well.
Absolutely. I don't think the changes have to be leaps and bounds. Like I saw, I can't remember who tweeted it now, and I wish I did, but someone was tweeting, if you don't get Garrett Cole, it's not the end of the world. Look at what we have down in AAA that's on their way up that Joe Girardi will have definitely bring up if the opportunity presents itself. But look at Aaron Nola, Zach Wheeler, Cole Hamels, Jake Arrieta, and Nick Pivetta, just the sounds of a top of 5 pitchers like that. And then if anybody starts to falter or fail, then you have those arms that are like in the AAA that might be able to come up and take the place, or dare we say a Vince Velasquez or any of those other ones who we had so much hope in this year and have faltered. I mean, it's not the be-all to end-all, but Phillies Twitter will have you believe the be-all end-all is a Strasburg or Garrett Cole signing. And I'm sorry, but I think this Joe Girardi signing is mass enough to make us leaps and bounds better than what we were last season. So don't believe everything you read or hear. But enough Phillies talk. Let's get into these Sixers and Flyers takes, because they are also in season right now, and much more important than the Phillies as we wait to see what happens with the rest of that offseason. But for those of you listening, don't forget to rate and review the show. Let us know how we're doing. Let us know what we could do better, because these shows would not be without you guys. So anything, whether it's negative, positive, whatever you want to say, if you just want to say that you guys are awesome, or if you want to say you guys suck and this is why, we will listen to it all, and we will promise not to cry on the air. We will just cry in secrecy.
I'll cry on the air if it's going to get us better ratings. I can promise that.
Well, at the end of the day, for me, I'm not going to cry in the air. You can cry in the air for the ratings, and I'm going to sit here and say, kind of give the old FU and say I'm going to be who I want to be, and this is how it's going to be. So let's touch on the Sixers topic. I want to touch on the Sixers topic, and then we'll wrap up with the Flyers. So, because I know that we're on opposite spectrums on this one. So the Sixers, Furkan Korkmaz is becoming pretty good. People are starting to react quite intriguingly for how early we are into this season for Korkmaz, if that shows any preface of what direction I lean with this. So Korkmaz has recently got more of an expanded role, and he seems like a viable option off of the bench for the Philadelphia 76ers going forward this season. After basically we thought he was going to go back to his home country and play basketball, and the entire fan base was prepared to let him walk away, and we wouldn't have shed a tear. So what are your thoughts on this new expanded role of Furkan Korkmaz? Does it last? Does it stay? Do you think that he could be replaced as the season goes on?
So I will say this is probably where I have to apologize for all the mean things I said about Furkan Korkmaz last year, because I thought the guy was a bum. Didn't really have a place in the Sixers. I didn't really push the needle either way, but I would say he's been the most polarizing part of the Sixers up to this point. And also I'd like to say that I have the Sixers on the background here. We're only up 2 points with 9 minutes left in the third quarter against the Charlotte Hornets, who are the worst team in basketball. So if you hear me yell at some point during the rest of this pod, it's because the Sixers are frustrating me beyond belief. But in tonight's game, perfect example, Korkmaz has 7 points. He has a terrible plus-minus of -14, and he's still wearing those goddamn awful yellow shoes that no one seems to quite get. I was making fun of them the whole first game he played, and, he played pretty well. He came out night 2, and he also played pretty well. And he was still wearing those goddamn yellow shoes. And then he had, a couple other big games. He had a game-winning shot against the Trailblazers, and he's starting to win me over a little bit. He started that night, I believe. It was either that night or the next night when Ben Simmons was out. I'm coming around to Furkan Korkmaz because he's shooting the three-pointers so efficiently. I believe he's shooting 42 or 40%, somewhere around there. And in a time when the Sixers are so desperate for shooters, we can't be picky about who it is. Is he ideal? Of course not. But he's stepping up. He's playing valuable minutes. And more so than anything, Brett Brown has all the faith in the world in this guy. I'm shocked up to this point that during media day or in any of the preseason stuff that no one mentioned Furkan Korkmaz. Because like you said, we didn't even think he was going to be on the team, and none of us would have thought twice about it. Literally, there would never have been a point when we talked about him ever again. However, I'm talking about Korkmaz literally every single day now because the guy has been such a crucial part of the team. And I'm kind of okay with it. I'm coming around to him being a big part of the team and a huge part of the bench mob. More so even almost than Mike Scott, as much as I like Mike Scott and as valuable as he's proven to be off the bench. I think Korkmaz has been the most valuable member of the bench thus far, which is crazy. And I hate the fact that I have to admit it, but he has been, and the guy deserves his credit. And granted, we're 9 or 8 games into the year at this point, but he's been awesome this far.
Yeah, so just to allude to the 3-point percentage, he's actually shooting 47% from 3. But I mean, I guess when we're looking at this guy, this is a guy who, he's currently outperforming all of his averages. Good. I mean, I like it. I mean, that's good. I'm just not sold on it. I mean, at this point, we're 8 games into the season, and everyone thinks that this guy has earned a new role, that he's like this revitalized player, and I just don't see it. I don't understand why. I mean, he's shooting the 3 better. He's shooting 47% after shooting 33% last season, but he shot 50% from 2, and now he's shooting 44% from 2, and he's not producing his rebounds average similar to what he's been in his career. His assists are down, steals are down. If all he's providing is that boost off the bench of scoring, I mean, we've seen this before. I've seen this story before with these guys coming off the bench and having these little short runs, looking good, getting the fans on their side, and suddenly they come crashing back down to earth. I mean, I'm not sold on it. I just can't get behind the Korkmaz train. I was one of those guys that when I saw that he was signing back in his home country, I said, bon voyage, good luck overseas, and hopefully you can improve your game and come back and be a better player. And now everyone's sitting here and they think that he's become that better player for the Sixers. But I was one of those guys that was a strong proponent of let's go get an actual shooter, an established shooter, someone who may have a night or two where they're off, but is not going to be like Korkmaz, who I can guarantee you will have more games that he will probably disappoint this season than he will make you happy and joyful like you are tonight. I was one of those guys who said, I'm okay with going to get a J.R. Smith. I'm okay with getting a Jamal Crawford. I was okay with them taking minutes away from a freaking Korkmaz. And I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, I just like his free throw percentage is down. Like the only thing that people are going crazy for is the fact that he's averaging a couple more points a game and he's shooting the 3-pointer better. We could have got that from other pieces in free agency. We could have got that from a cheap piece in free agency that probably would have been consistently good. Someone who wouldn't sacrifice other stats for a singular stat like the 3-point shot. Yes, Korkmaz has looked better, but I definitely don't think it stays. I definitely think that he's a below average player. And we've seen what happens when Brett Brown has faith in some players. It doesn't always lead to success. And sometimes it leads to their burial deep in the bench later on in the season when it really matters. So I'm not necessarily sold on any of what I'm seeing right now. Because, I mean, if you go through the stats, yeah, he's playing better defense. Yeah, he's shooting a better 3-point shot. And yeah, he's getting a few more points a game, probably attributed to that 3-point shot. But in all reality, it's at the sacrifice of a number of different statistical categories where he's still performing either to career average or below average.
To me, I think you kind of proved my point a little bit in through what you were saying. So you're saying that we could have spent some money in free agency and gotten 3-point shooter or something, but we didn't have to spend any money. We got Korkmaz. He's there on the bench, and he's only going to shoot threes. I don't care if the guy doesn't get rebounds. I don't care if he doesn't have assists. If we need someone to shoot threes and he's going to do it, that's okay with me, especially on a team where everyone is gigantic and they all play incredible defense. I don't even care if he plays defense, really. If he can keep shooting threes, I'm happy with this. And 8 games into the year, he's earned my respect a little bit to have the ball in his hands. The fact that he hit that shot to beat Portland, which was a game we definitely shouldn't have won, by the way. I can't believe they came away with that. I mean, it's well documented how much I love the Portland Trailblazers, but they've been a bit of a mess this year. And the fact that they lost to Furkan Korkmaz, hitting a corner 3, just real icy at the end of the game. I mean, that was a tragedy for them and just an incredible steal for us. I mean, I was smiling ear to ear after that game. But I'm okay with if he wants to step into this role of being a bomber, and I actually hate that Brett Brown uses that word, so I'm going to stop doing it. But if he wants to just shoot threes and be our guy to come off the bench and shoot threes, if he's going to go ice cold a game, get his ass back on the bench. I don't care. But if he's going to be hot and be out there and contribute, I'm okay with that. He's 22 years old.
But you've seen it when Brett Brown has faith in a guy, he's not going to necessarily pull the trigger because he's just having a couple rough nights. That's why I was all for going and getting. Who cares? Like, you're sitting there and you're talking about we didn't have to go and spend money. Who the hell cares if we have to go? It's not your money. It's not your dollars being spent. This is a manager who wants to win. So you're going to put the right pieces in play. We literally have a guy who comes off the bench and his only statistical category that is above average is his 3-point shot. And we act like, oh my God, this guy's going to completely turn this season around for us if ever we need this guy to come out. I think we could have went out. We could have spent the money and we wouldn't have lost anything from the game. I would have had more faith in a Jamal Crawford or a J.R. Smith. I would have put the ball in their hands to take that shot in Portland too. The fact that they put it in the hands of Korkmaz proves that you probably could have put it in the hands of Shaquille O'Neal and had faith that he hits that 3-point shot. So, I mean, I'm not necessarily sold. I'm not buying this. If we had to go out there and we had to spend the veterans minimum on a Jamal Crawford who's still out there right now as a free agent, I'm not ruling out that at some point this season we go out and we get one of those veteran minimum shooters, get them at that veterans minimum, and they come onto this team and they perform. And it's something that we should have had all season long, but we decided to save our dollars on.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a big proponent of saving the money just because you want to be able to make future moves and stuff, and having space in the cap allows you to do that, especially in a sport like basketball where money is everything. So if you don't plan stuff out properly, then it puts you in a bad spot, like the Brooklyn Nets not that long ago, and it can just ruin a franchise. So I agree we wouldn't be spending a ton of money, but I'm not a proponent of just going out there and spending money to spend it.
It's just like the Kyle Quinn thing. You spend that cheap veterans minimum 1 year, and then you move on. That's the type of thing that I'm thinking of. Like if you have a guy who's sacrificed in other statistical categories just to be a 3-point shooter, I'd rather go out and spend the money.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, so we wanted Kyle Korver. We didn't get him, when we were bidding for it. And Kyle Korver is just a better 3-point shooter than Korkmaz. I mean, we can all agree on that. The statistics are there. The eye test is there. Korver just is better. But we couldn't get him. And Korver just does nothing else. So if that's all we were looking for is someone to shoot a 3, why don't we try this for a little bit? And if it doesn't work out 15 games into the year, 25 games into the year, let's go out there and get Jamal Crawford. I hate J.R. Smith, so I hope they don't bring him in. But, I mean, he would add a value to the team if all he has to do is shoot. Just ironically, too, while we were sitting here talking, Korkmaz drained his second 3 of the game. So that made me smile a little bit. But
good. He's on average. He's making 2.2 threes a game right now. So
he's right on average, yeah.
Yeah, so hopefully he gets above average. That's the thing. Like when we're looking at a Sixers team like we're looking at right now, we need people to show up and become above average.
You just drained another one.
Well,
that's over average.
Become above average performers across the board, and I'm just not sold that he becomes an above average performer across the board and that necessary player that we need. But I mean, as you continue to watch the game, I think we will move on from this topic so that we no longer have to hear that he hit his 4th 3 at some point here.
Oh, I'm going to pipe up when he hits it because it'll happen. We got a quarter of basketball left.
This isn't fair, okay? It's just not right that this is happening while we talked about it. I knew I should have picked that Flyers topic because here, you know what? Now I'm going to throw you under the bus. I know you don't do hockey. I know you don't watch your Flyers very much, so it's my turn. So we're going to talk about the curious case of Jacob Voracek. Jacob Voracek, who is currently on a absolute monster deal that is costing us about $8 million a year over the next, I believe there's another 4 to 5 years left on this contract. I actually believe it's 5 years. He's been met with, it seems like, some criticism and being sat a bit further down the bench under Alain Viano this year. And he's, despite the point totals, 16 games played, 12 points, he's not performing at the level of an $8.25 million player. My question is, keep him or move on from him? What is your opinion on this situation?
I think we got to keep him because we're not going to get the value that if we trade him, I don't think we're going to get the value back for him because he's not producing right now. So you just kind of got to sit on him here. We do have an expansion draft coming up, so him going away in the expansion draft. And I don't want to jump into your points because I know you're going to get into that. Him going away in the expansion draft might be a great thing for us, and we should just kind of hope on that. But I'm never a proponent of just because someone has a big contract and they're slightly underperforming to what you need, I'm never a proponent of just getting rid of them to get rid of them and take nothing back for it. I mean, the Phils have done that for years and gotten nothing back for, Kurt Schilling or a couple other ones. I mean, that's more of a baseball move than anything. But I think if the Flyers, tried to get rid of Voracek right now, they would get raped in the open market for it, and they wouldn't feel good about it when he's wearing another sweater and he's out there just back to his old ways. I mean, he's not an old dude. You just got to ride with him a little bit here and hope that he comes back later throughout the year. The Flyers are they're not in a dominant position. They're not great. They're not terrible. So him being there could lead them to go on more of a run and just make them a better team. So I don't see a reason to jump ship as of yet.
Yeah. So for me, you did allude to the fact that the thing that I want to point out is the expansion draft is our saving grace. I completely agree. You're not getting the value out of this guy. You put this guy on an absurd contract where you were paying him he was hitting an $8.25 million cap hit over I think it was 8 years even. I think it's 8 years that he's under contract, and it's not there. We're riding on. I mean, he had an 82 game season, so 2017, 2018, 82 games played, 85 points. And then there was 2014, 2015, 82 games played, 81 points. All around that is just mediocre, subpar performances. Nowhere near $8 million performance. When 2015, it was 55 points in 73 games, a -5 player. In 2016-17, 61 points, 82 games played, a -24 player. 2018-19, last season, 66 points in 78 games, -16. This guy is not he's barely worth $5 million in my eyes. And last season at the trade deadline, I wrote an article for the Always Next Year podcast, and I said it was one of my first pieces that I actually wrote. And it was a trade deadline, and it was who I wanted, what a perfect scenario for trades that I wanted to go down. And in a couple of the trades, I had Jake Voracek being traded away because he actually carried somewhat of a value, because the guy was close to a point a game average and coming off an 85-point season where he was over a point a game average. And so I was ready to jump ship with him then. And at this point, there is the saving grace is that when Seattle does the expansion draft and we choose who we want to save, you dangle him out there. You leave him out there. You make one of those moves where you try and trade for a draft pick and they eat all that cap. You give him before the expansion draft, or you give him to them at the expansion draft and just get the contract off the books. But at this point, if we were to make any type of trade, we literally are going to end up eating probably half the salary cap, because no one's going to take on $8.25 million of cap on a guy who's not even worth half his contract at this point. I mean, we're living on a couple of decent seasons. When you look back, it's the last 6 seasons. We're living on 2 seasons where he was actually a positive contributor and a positive performer. And I still stand by this statement that we should have moved him at the trade deadline last season, because that was where you were going to get your biggest potential bang for your buck. He was at a kind of a shaky point in the season, but he was still coming off a season where he averaged over a point per game, and he ended up scoring 20 goals. He scored 20 goals his last 3 seasons. So there's no doubts that he can bring things to the team. It's just in a team that could end up cap stricken in the future, like it looks like there's a potential we could be. This is a salary cap that has to come off the books, and I think the expansion draft is definitely going to be a saving grace on that one.
Yeah, I agree. We need to get the contract off the books, but like you said, if we trade him, then we're still going to be paying this contract anyway. So you might as well hope that the guy bounces back a little bit. But I mean, at this point, just all trends are leading towards him just not providing or producing up to the level that we need him to.
Yeah, we don't want to be pulling the Ilya Brizgalov where we literally paid parts of his contract for years after the fact. He just came off the books like last season, and we were paying like $1 million or something on his contract for 5 or 6 seasons. We don't need to be in that type of absurd situation. So the expansion draft will be huge. You either dangle them out there in a trade offer because you know they're going to have a ton of cap space. You know they're not picking from the cream of the crop, so they're going to have a lot of cap space. Or you just choose not to protect him and pray that they take him off your hands in that way. So there's 1 or 2 ways to go about it with the expansion team. And I just hope that we can get him off the books at that point, because it's the easiest decision Chuck Fletcher will have to make as a manager for the Flyers in a fan base starved of championships and starved of making the playoffs and just stuck in mediocrity. You could not ask for a better move from Chuck Fletcher.
What do you think the odds are of him getting sent to the Seattle expansion team? Like, what would you put it at right now? Right
now, I would probably put it at 75%. I think there's a really high percentage right now that he's going to that team because I think Chuck Fletcher knows at this point no one's going to eat that contract while giving us any type of value and added value. And for now, he plugs and plays it fairly well as a bottom six player, be it the third line or if he's really in LA Viano's doghouse at fourth line, but never have I seen it that bad yet. But I mean, yeah, I'd say the chances are really high because he's just, that's the only way you're getting any value out of it. And even if the value is just that you eat $0 of his contract, then that is value added enough for this team, I think. So I think 75%. And at the end of the season, if he doesn't get above a point per game performer, then I'm going to say probably 95% chance. And the only reason I cannot go 100% is because if we dangle them out there and we don't protect them and they choose not to take them, there's always that risk because they see the salary cap and they see what that could cost them. But for them, it would only be for 4 more years. For us, 4 more years is far too long to hold that type of contract on the books.
That was going to be my exact point in there being, is there a world where Voracek plays this poorly for the rest of the year and say he just truly underachieves, he puts up 58 points or something or some gross number for a guy making $8 million a year? Do you think that the Seattle expansion team won't take him then because he's just not worth the value? Is there any risk in that? Or
I think it would all depend on, at the end of the day, who we choose to protect. Because Jacob Voracek could intrigue them if he's the best of the unprotected players. And we obviously know offhand who's going to be those protected players. You know that you're going to protect a JVR, you're going to protect a Claude Giroux, a Travis Konechny, Carter Hart. You know who you're going to protect. But at the same time, look at the clogging going on our defensive line. Look at the bottom 6 players we have and those coming up. There's so much more intriguing options than a Jacob Voracek and that atrocity of a contract. That's why I think we might have to try and trade him for a lower round draft pick and say, you eat all the cap, you take this, and we'll throw you this draft pick, you throw us that draft pick. That may actually be ultimately the direction we have to go, is to make some sort of business deal in that way to say, you have a ton of cap. It's only for 4 more years for you guys. We need that cap now. Let's try and get a deal done if they don't choose to grab him through the expansion. But like I said, the plethora of youth we have coming up, it's just so difficult to tell who will be dangled out there unprotected for our team. And they very well may see some of our defensive players as far better options than Voracek and know with desperation that we'll come knocking. So it's really tough to say. It really depends on who we end up dangling out there as unprotected players. And at the end of the day, I said it last year I think it was it wasn't the beginning of the year. I gave him a bit of time. And I said this contract is not going to age well. And it's rearing its ugly head slowly but surely.
Okay. Well, Sixers scoring update. We're up 88-81 going into the 4th here. So
Flyers scoring update 2-0 at the first intermission over the Bruins. But so yeah, that will be that for Crossing Borders this week. Like we said, rate, review the show, and wait, how could I forget? Guarantee of the week. This is what everybody waits until the 50th minute of the episode to hear, is our guarantee of the week in Philadelphia sports. What do you have as a guarantee of the week?
All right. So my guarantee of the week is definitely going to be with our Eagles coming off of a bye next week. I'm trying to pull up the line on what the Pats game will be with them. Whatever that line is, I'm going to take the Eagles without fail. They're going to come strong off this bye. I think they're going to come out looking great. I think the Pats are on a downtrend right now. We're going to go in, I believe it's in Foxborough, correct?
No, I think it's in.
No, it's at home, actually.
It's at home. Yeah, it's at home.
Good. Even better. Good. Because we're going to stomp all over Tom Brady's throat. Everyone's just going to realize that the Pats are on the downtrend right now. They're great, but there's no way that the Eagles are not going to cover in this game. I'm not going to say that we're definitely going to win, but we're definitely going to cover in this game. So my guarantee is the Eagles plus whatever amount of points are on this past game next week. Go Birds.
Yeah, I would like to know what that is too, actually. Would really
I don't
love
think
to
it's
know.
out yet.
It may not be out, so tough to say. For me, oh, boys, oh, boys. Oh, I think my guarantee of the week is that we're beating Philly. I don't give a shit about that. Or we're beating the Pats. I don't give a shit about the line. Tom Brady's starting to show his age. That defense is good, but it showed some cracks, and they let Lamar Jackson run all over them. Well, we have Carson Wentz, Miles Sanders, Jordan Howard. My guarantee of the week is that we're coming out of Philly with a victory, and a massive, massive victory, because losing those first couple games in this 6-game stretch, which was crucial, and I think we need to go 3-3 or 4-2. This Patriots game, definitely. This Patriots game and the Seahawks game, we can afford to lose one or the other. I think we're beating the Patriots, and that's a game I'd rather win. I want to win them both, but I'd rather win a Patriots game. Who doesn't want to beat the Patriots? Who doesn't want to beat a team from Boston right now, just like we're doing to the Bruins? Like, you want to beat those Boston teams because they're the city of championships. All they do is win championships. All they do is win, and it's time for Philly to become the city of champions, the city of championships. And winning that game would be huge, because then we have Seattle. I think Seattle would be an easier game than the New England game, so we'd have a chance there. And then we have a stretch of 5 games against teams who combine to have like maybe 5 wins, 6 wins total. So that would be huge for us to come out with a couple wins there, especially when the only chance of making the playoffs in the NFC presently is winning that division over the Cowboys.
We have to. Yeah.
So go Vikings tonight. And did I ever not expect to say that? But ever. But you got to make your choices, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I hate relying on Kirk Cousins for anything, but I do like that tonight. Go Kirk Cousins, go Vikings. We need a big win.
Oh, yeah. Big time. Well, for Scott and for myself, Connor, you can follow us I'm at Connor10, TEN on Twitter. Where can they find you, Scott?
You can find me at SP Novick, Novick.
And you can find the rest of the network at ANY Podcast on Twitter. And we have plenty of shows, so check them all out. I know that Shane and Scott are recording a TJs One of Us as well tonight, that they will probably end up putting up at the same time as Crossing Borders. So after you check out Crossing Borders, you can check out TJs One of Us, and make sure to rate and review, and make sure to give us all a follow, and tell us if we're doing good, if we're doing bad. We have thick skin. We'll take whatever. Thanks so much, and have a great night.
A fighting man I used to be, revered and feared through Killarney. Now I'm back to hitching with the wind. But if Mickey Flynn should ever find me, I'll throw me caution all behind me and square off on that son of a bitch again. He cracked open a river too, he beat me Sunday through and through, danced a jig over my unconscious frame. I won me healthy sheriff fights, well lucky son, still happy life since Mickey Flynn beat me dumb and lame.